New World's first major expansion, Rise of the Angry Earth, was just announced by Amazon Games last week. This expansion will add the long-requested feature of rideable mounts, a new weapon type, the Flail, and a transformation of the previous starting zone of First Light into a new zone called the Elysian Wilds. In this new expansion, character level cap will be increased to 65, maximum gear score will be increased to 700, trade skills will have a new level cap of 250, and there will be one additional faction tier to earn. Shortly after announcing this expansion, videos began to leak of some of the new features coming to the game, with one of the most exciting features being the upcoming mount system. In order to unlock mounts, players will need to complete a questline that will become available after the character has reached a certain level. Mounts in Rise of the Angry Earth will come in 3 varieties, with horses being the first mount available to players at level 25. Dire wolves will become available at level 45, and lion mounts will become available at level 60. Along with mounts will also come a new trade skill, called riding. Leveling up this new skill will allow mounts to move faster, as well as give the player the ability to craft food, which will give the mount additional benefits. Mounts will also have customizable names, armor, and decorative trophies. Some mount items will also provide a stat boost, increasing their overall speed, recharge rate, and character encumbrance limit, just to name a few. While making travel much faster and easier, mounts will also provide a new minigame coming to the expansion, racing. Similar to World of Warcraft Dragonflight's timed courses, players will be required to complete a series of checkpoints in order to gain rewards that will provide additional mount upgrades. In addition to this new system, Rise of the Angry Earth will also bring a complete overhaul to how loot works in New World. As a result of player feedback, the Creature Bane perks, Creature Ward perks, Resilience perks, and the entire system of expertise are going to be removed from the game. Going forward, the gear score of loot will depend entirely on the level of the creature that the loot dropped from. Because of this change, players will now be able to acquire max level gear just by killing the most difficult enemies in the game. In addition, the team has stated that players should expect to see less overall loot dropping from enemies, but the loot that does drop will be much higher quality. In order to ensure that players are receiving the most relevant loot for their builds, the team has developed a new system called loot biasing. This system will take into account the player's current attributes, weapons, and armor weight, and give players a higher chance of receiving loot that would be an upgrade for their current loadout. This will also change dynamically, depending on what the player is wearing at the time that they receive the loot. For example, if you currently have a sword and shield equipped, but you're trying to farm an upgrade for your flail, you can simply equip a flail before opening a cache, in order to increase your chances of receiving an upgrade for your currently equipped gear. Speaking of the flail, this new weapon will allow players to enhance their attacks, buff teammates, and apply debuffs to enemies. In the leaked footage, we're able to check out the flail's upcoming abilities. In the Cleric tree, Arcane Smite is a melee AoE ability that leaves behind a hazardous area. If enemies move through this area, they will take additional damage over time and reduce the damage these enemies deal by 10% for 6 seconds, and this can stack up to 3 times. Arcane Vortex hits all enemies within melee range up to 4 times, and grants all allies within melee range a 10% empower bonus for 5 seconds. The final active ability in the Cleric tree is Arcane Eruption, which is a frontal attack that applies 2 stacks of impairment for 6 seconds to all enemies who are hit. In the Bastion tree, Barrage causes the character to sprint forward, dealing damage and staggering enemies. Trip deals single target damage and knocks the enemy to the ground, and Warding Bludgeon causes the character to leap into the air, increasing armor by 50% for 8 seconds for the character as well as allies within melee range, and dealing damage to enemies upon landing. We're also able to see the final passives for each tree. On the Bastion side, Human Shield bonds the flail user to the nearest ally whenever using an ability. This bond will reduce the incoming damage received by that ally by 50%, and 35% of that damage will be transferred to the flail user instead. The final passive under the Cleric tree, called Better Together, grants the player and all allies within 4 meters passive healing over time equal to 16% of the player's weapon damage every 2 seconds. In order to alleviate the weapon mastery grind, the developers have decided to reduce the amount of experience required to reach weapon mastery 20 by about 30% for every weapon in the game. In addition to this new weapon type, there will also be a new item rarity called Artifacts. These will be gear score 700 items that will have one perk that is unique to that specific item. Artifacts can be acquired in a number of different ways, from killing open world named bosses, to completing expeditions, to participating in the PvP reward track. After acquiring an artifact, players will be tasked with completing a series of quests in order to unlock the 6 perks that are associated with that artifact item. Since artifacts are going to be some of the most powerful items in-game, players will be limited to only having 3 artifacts equipped at one time: 1 weapon, 1 armor piece, and 1 trinket. While we don't have any footage of these artifacts yet, the developers described a couple of them during a recent update. Scorpion Sting is a spear artifact that impales an enemy and pulls them within melee range of the player. This item can be a great way for melee builds to deal with ranged enemies. The Wall is a tower shield that reduces elemental damage taken and dramatically increases the player's chance to block. But as a trade-off, this artifact will not allow the player to dodge while the shield is equipped. Finally, the Abyss is a great axe that scales off of intelligence rather than strength, and deals void damage. This could make for some fun battle mage builds when paired with the Void Gauntlet, Fire Staff, or Ice Gauntlet. On the topic of gear, the developers have stated that they feel there is too much RNG related to crafting. In order to help mitigate this going forward, the team is introducing new crafting items that will allow players to craft custom-made gear. Using these items, players will be able to choose their desired gear score, attributes, and perks of an individual piece of crafted gear. Rise of the Angry Earth will also give players a new heart gem to play with, called Primal Fury. This heart gem will double the character's size and allow them to attack enemies barehanded, using a swiping light attack or a leap slam heavy attack. Along with New World's next chapter will also come in addition to the main storyline, a new endgame zone, the Elysian Wilds, and a new level 62 plus expedition called the Savage Divide. In addition to the main story being expanded, storylines and quests in the previous zones of Eden Grove and the Great Cleave will also be receiving revamps. Rise of the Angry Earth will also feature a new open-world PvP event called Influence Races. During these scheduled and timed events, players will be able to capture new points of interest called Influence Towers, complete PvP missions within the specific zone, and hold control over forts in order to gain points. The faction with the highest number of combined points at the end of this event will be rewarded, and will also be given the opportunity to declare war against an opposing faction. During these Influence Races, players will be encouraged to balance out scoring points, as well as preventing the opposing factions from scoring points, in order to gain further advantages in the future declared war. Additional content will also be released as a part of Season 3, which will include a new season journey, as well as seasonal events, including the Halloween-themed Night Vale Hollow and the annual Turkey Terror event. While the recent leaks have given us a glimpse of what to expect when New World Rise of the Angry Earth releases in October, it should be noted that these leaked videos are not from an official source, and information could be different on release. If you'd like to get a first look at the new content coming to Rise of the Angry Earth, Amazon Games has stated that the PTR should be available in the coming weeks. Rise of the Angry Earth will be available starting on October 3rd, and will be priced at around $30 USD. But what are your first impressions of New World's first big expansion? Is there enough content, new features, and quality of life improvements to bring you back to this MMO? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.